Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. I'm Luis Scott Vargas here with Eric Froelich, who we just saw emerge victorious from I would say a pitched battle, but honestly, none of the games were all that close.
The third game was close-ish.
Yeah,
It was definitely a game.
The third game was a game. The first game you lost to, and we were actually, I remember talking about this particular matchup, and I told you could never win game one in a million years.
Yeah.
And then,
well, I mean, he got to keep a 7-card, like, basically not hand game one. In game two, he kept a 0-card, do nothing hand. So, like,
Yes.
complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Certainly, if he starts on, like, 5 cards, doesn't have a grave troll.
even then, it's a real stretch because like
yeah,
your goldfish is just so slow.
It's not fast, but like my hand, if his hand, if he had the hand I'm describing with like, a 5-card, no grave troll hand, he's going to be kind of slow. And so I can cast Pyromancer, I can kill my token, or I can kill something to get rid of the bridge, and I had Time Walk, so like I can do things. It's not stone dead, but yeah, it's a horrible game 1 matchup. You're completely right. And
then you ended up going with 6 sideboard cards at least. I would be surprised if it was less than that.
Yeah, I boarded in 7 cards total. I boarded in another copy of Dig Through Time because, I have a few things to help slow them down. Plus, they do that themselves because they have to board in all the answers for cards like Grafdigger's Cage and, some of the cards that you expect to face. And that does slow them down. I mean, their goldfish gets a little bit slower. The games last a little bit longer. So if I can turn on Dig Through Time, my answers that I'm looking to find are cost 1 or 0 mana. I've got Grafdigger's Cages and Ravenous Traps. So, yeah, that ended up working out perfectly in game 3. I was able to set up Dig Through Time. He was able to blow up the first cage. I was in good shape with the first trap, and then Dig found a second cage and a second trap. So at that point, things looked mighty nice.
Yeah, it was basically exactly how you drew it up there.
Yeah, I told you that was what was going to happen.
Yeah. So, and that's how the games have to go if Delver's going to beat Dredge is you're going to have some, hate cards. I guess game 2, technically you could have had 0 hate cards. He never did a single thing because, he hit the 4%er of having a completely unplayable game. But as it turns out, game 3, your hate cards beat his deck. He had a great draw and you still beat it. So, looks like our match is ready to go. We've got Randy versus Rich Shay.
I'm going to turn off these Skype sounds that are probably making people crazy. Is that not being heard? Okay, maybe not. Sweet.
All right, and it looks like Randy on the bottom there is on the Belcher deck that he played to the top 4 of the vintage, or top 2 actually, of the vintage Holiday Champs, and Rich is on Delver. So, yeah. So we've got some kind of rematches in the sense that this was the finals matchup between me and Randy, but we'll see how this end up being different.
That tournament?
That was Randy destroying you, I believe.
Destroying? Yeah, I punted. I played. Still tilted.
So Randy mulled a 6 here, and his hand doesn't have a turn 1 kill. So let me explain a little about Randy's deck, because it's one of the more off-the-wall decks here. He played it in the pre-game match against Kai at the end of last season, and again, he made the finals of the Holiday Champs with it.
And I'll clear up everything that Luis gets wrong when he's done.
It's a mono blue deck. The only land is Tolarian Academy. It's got 4 expedition maps. And so it's trying to just play Goblin Charbelcher and activate it. If you've mapped, you just kill them. And if you haven't, you still have a very good shot of killing them. You only have the 1 land in your deck. It also has Vault Key in it. Presumably, that's what his list had before with some big cards like Tezzeret and other ways to search, like Tinker to search out artifacts. It also has a bunch of draw 7s. And all it's trying to do is, play Moxes. Ideally regular ones, not Chrome Moxes, but Mox between Chrome Mox, Mox Opal, regular Moxes. It can generate a lot of mana super early, and it can kill you turn 1 or 2 a pretty large percentage of the time.
Yeah. No, it's a sweet deck, and one of the reasons I believe that Randy has played this deck in the tournaments that he played it is because the matchup against Delver is just very good.
Yeah, you put a lot of pressure on them really, really quickly to have all the right answers. And Delver is an attrition deck. It's got a lot of cards like Lightning Bolt in it and Dak Faden that aren't really, the kind of cards that you really will stop a turn 1 kill, especially from a Belcher. So here, Randy, we see Randy mulligan to 6. We see him have to imprint on Chrome Mox and then get his Expedition map Mental Misstep. So right now, Randy's not at a spot where he can do anything.
Yeah, his hand is as cleanly you can put hot garbage.
So, Rich is under pressure to find, an actual way to stop Randy. But, given the way this game is turning out, Dak Faden, Steel, and Chrome Mox really will earn the title Greatest Thief in the Multiverse. And Rich did preordain into Force Will, which is, your best card in the matchup.
Yeah, and Randy's done a great job of just stopping himself. I mean, not Randy himself, but the deck has not given him exactly what he wants. Although this could, if he did not draw Force of Will, that would have been a great draw.
Yeah, and I think
Still, it's a good draw, but.
I mean, this is why I would not advise
Oh, I'm
playing
sorry.
Randy.
Mox Opal does not act as Lotus Petal because he cannot turn
Right.
on Milcraft.
Yeah, so he's one step away. One of the reasons not to play Randy's deck without practice is to know when you have to just lose to Force of Will. And
Yeah.
it's probably a higher percentage of the time than you might think. But, Rich is using Time Walk as an explorer here to play Dak Fade and to take Chrome Mox, to put Randy multiple pieces of mana away from casting any spells. And Randy's deck doesn't have a lot of what you'd call, base mana that can start from nothing. It's got a lot of cards like Soul Ring and Mana Vault that, and Mox Opal that require other cards to produce mana. Randy's right now at 0 mana that, starts from scratch.
Yeah, what if you're Randy, what are you hoping to draw here? Anything? I mean, it's going to take a series of draws. There's no one thing. We know that, but Black Lotus, that's where you want to start and hope that Windfall resolves.
But the thing is, Windfall doesn't even do anything.
Yeah, you have to sacrifice, you're trading Black Lotus and the Windfall to draw effectively 3 new cards. Yeah, Black Lotus doesn't do anything either, and Charbelcher does even less.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you're signing up for. I mean, sometimes this deck, kills you on turn 1 through a Force of Will. I've seen the deck do that multiple times, but sometimes one mental misstep and, like, even without the Dak Fade, Randy still couldn't have done anything. So he basically lost to a lone mental misstep, which is kind of what you signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, Disruption is good against all index. It's no surprise to anyone.
Yeah, and this is the deck where you kind of hope to, be on the play against stacks because they can't ever do anything turn 1 unless they have Mindbreak Trap post board. It is funny that at least the previous iterations of the deck sideboarded Leyline of Anticipation, which is the blue Leyline, which lets you start with it in play because it's a Leyline, and then play cards whenever you could play an instant. You could play like a permanent or just any card. So you get to go off in response to them playing like a turn 1 sphere. It's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, it is sweet.
So Rich is doing stuff, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. He's found the second Force Well. Looks like he's on Dig Through Times as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, his draw was solid. The Force of Will off the top kind of sealed the deal, but the misstep was really all he needed.
Yeah, I mean, all these other cards make it so Randy can't really top deck his way out of it, but the misstep bought a ton of turns here.
Yeah. Yeah, the deck, if you draw Academy in your opening hands, you don't have to rely on something like Expedition Map. You can do some really explosive things. But Mulligans, I mean, you're talking about an all-in deck, so again, it's one of those things that really needs a lot of resources. Like the fact that you can't even turn on these Mox Opals, let alone each second, each one beyond the first is effectively a Lotus Petal at best. But you need artifacts. I mean, you got to get 3 of them into play, and some of them aren't as cheap if you draw 2 Goblin Charbelchers.
Yeah, and Dig Through Time is going to make it so even Randy probably doesn't think he has any hope without knowing Rich's hand, but it really is just a formality. Mox Opal is one of the reasons why the deck is good and why it exists, honestly. Like, without Mox Opal, I think this deck would be much less exciting, but Mox Opal gives it, not only Lotus Petals, but actual Moxes, so it gets to play a lot of Moxes.
Yeah, the Legend rule really made Mox Opal from already a very strong card into just an absolute all-star in a lot of different decks across, Vintage and even Legacy and Modern.
Yeah, because the old Legend rule, you just couldn't play your second one, but now you can just keep playing them and, sacrificing the tapped one. So the first Mox Opal's a Mox, all subsequent ones are Lotus Petals, which
is a restricted card. Lotus Petals are a restricted card. Like that, we're not talking about something that's something underpowered.
Yeah. So it looks like Rich is attacking and using Dak and just making sure that no sequences of what Randy can do can really get through. And Rich doesn't know Randy's hand. For all he knows, Randy has Mind Desire, one of the ways to get around counters. Lotus, Mana Vault, some combination, Pact of Negation.
Yeah, you're never noticing. Mana Desire is such a sweet card. It creates so many different intricacies in, well, not just Vintage, but also Cube, where it's hard to know exactly what card you want to counter because you want people to just cast all their rituals, go all in, go for it. I got the counter for your big spell, your Yawgmoth's Bargain's going down, your Yawgmoth's Will, whatever it may be, and then there's just Mind Desire. You're like, oh, right. Yeah. So if you're not familiar that card exists, it gets you.
Yeah, Mind Desire is the way to get your way out of your opponent having 3 counters in their hand, but Yeah, Rich is a savvy vintage player. He's probably experienced at playing against Mindczar. I would be surprised if Randy was able to steal a game with Mindczar all that easily. Sometimes you can still do it, but I bet Rich is at least aware of it. So
Yeah, I mean, familiarity with the format is huge. The first time you get got by Mind's Desire, it sticks in your mind though.
yeah,
You don't generally get got twice. Where you're just like,
and you
I'm just
desire
gonna
to
let
not
him
get hit by
go.
it again.
Oh God,
Sorry, I don't mind if I do. Anyway,
I have to deal with this in person soon.
uh,
Does anybody out there not have a team for San Jose?
I don't think Paul does.
Yeah, that's true. I'll call
But
it for this.
once you look at sideboards, I think generally the Belcher deck gets worse post board because it doesn't get to sideboard that many relevant cards. Though, it's possible that the Delver deck has very few sideboard cards. I've run Delver sideboards that have 1 to 2 sideboard cards for this matchup. The cards you're really looking for are like Norod being the best one by far, because I don't think the Belcher deck can beat a Norod that resolves. It almost can't beat one that goes on the stack.
Well, it does have some counter spells, and it does have some pretty explosive ways to turn on pack navigation. I mean, he's playing 4 Force of Wills, I believe. I mean, certainly hasn't passed.
I'd be surprised if he didn't.
So, it can beat a null red on the stack, but once that thing gets into play, things get real tricky real quick. And I've actually, I don't know. Chalice is also another real strong card against the deck, but I've seen Randy go off through things like Chalice with just a bunch of zeros in his hand. Basically, Hercule's recalling his entire board, casting all his cards to get countered, and then just casting Mind's Desire right then for just millions. So the deck does some very cool things.
Yeah, and it has cards like Tezzeret the Seeker, which kind of win you games out of nowhere. Like that, Tezzeret can actually win just by plussing a few times, then attacking with a bunch of 5/5s.
I mean, it's still a Planeswalker that's getting attacked by creatures on the other side and gets bolted. Yeah. I mean, it's hard for the Delver deck to not have any sideboard cards because you're going to have cards against shops, and even if, Ingot Chewer is not the greatest card in the world, it's certainly good. I mean, killing an artifact is a thing.
Yeah, I remember when I actually played against Randy himself in the finals, I boarded an Ingot Chewer, and one of the games it was good. If you can, sometimes they just have to play Belcher without the mana to activate it, so you can snipe it that way. Sometimes they play a Mox in a map, and you just kill a Mox or kill the map or whatever. I mean, you've got enough dead cards in your deck. Lightning bolts and stuff like that are just not what you want at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, also just being able to kill a Grim Monolith, that's a lot of mana that's going down the drain.
Yeah. All right, so Randy has Academy in the opening hand, and when you have Academy in the opening hand, the deck is multiple times better. I think this is the best deck in the format if you always opened with Academy in your 7. That being said, it's not like the deck's unbeatable then, but it's so much nicer when you just have this 2 to 3 mana source for free, basically. So the Rich's hand looks pretty ideal. Oh, wow, he's got Wear Tear in there too, so he might have some white mana lurking. So... But he's got Ingot Chewer, he's got Wear Tear, he's got Mental Misstep, and he has Force of Will, so it doesn't really get better than this.
Yeah, that's a lot of disruption. And the Treasure Cruise.
And the 1 Treasure Cruise. The question for Rich is, do you let Randy see your hand? Because Mental Misstep is in general pretty good against him. Yeah. So Rich did, and Randy now sees the bad news where Randy has a good turn 2 play. He has, Mox into Grim Monolith, but Rich is for sure going to Ingot Chewer the Grim Monolith if Randy just passes the turn with that in play.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an interesting game. This Academy is not looking super powerful.
No, I mean, I talked all about how great Academy was, but it turns out Randy has 2 artifacts and 4 blue cards in his hand, which is not the normal proportion, and Rich is going to get to blow up one of those artifacts. I mean, it would be kind of insane not to.
Yeah, I think Randy, what's he looking to do? Draw an artifact and just cast Windfall, run it into Force of Will, and kind of have the game closer to even? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, if he draws something like Soul Ring, then he's in a spot where he can cast all his cards eventually.
Right. Yeah, Soul Ring is great, of course, because it just auto turns on, basically diminishing turns when you an artifact away from.
Does know about the Mental Misstep, and he knows Soul Ring would get Mental Misstep, which is kind of unfortunate. So, yeah, I guess Randy doesn't really want to draw 1s, and I mean, he doesn't want to draw blue cards. He wants to draw artifacts, so he needs a bunch of artifacts in a row here. Even Expedition Map just taps for a mana basically with Academy. It has nothing to get.
I wonder if Rich will decide to run a Mental Misstep on an Expedition Map. I can't imagine he would, but there aren't actually that many hits. Although he does have a bunch of preordains and different card drawing spells, so there's definitely hits.
Yeah. So Randy drew Chromox, which is one of the most awkward draws because now he can play it, to get up to 4 mana.
Well, the Mind's Desire is really weak right now, although you do still want it in your deck.
The thing is, Randy also the wear tear complicates things. Because if not for the wear tear, I think Randy may have viable lines where he just passes, hopes to draw like 1 or 2 more artifacts to run out Mind's Desire, and Rich can't really stop him. But I mean, if you're Rich and Randy passes with this in play, I'm really tempted to just blow up that Mox Ruby and reduce Randy to 0 mana.
I mean, really tempted. What, you don't even have a choice on this matter. Like his hand, like he wants to get cards in his graveyard to turn on Treasure Cruise anyway. He's got no threat to play. Like, yeah, that wear tear is getting.
So, given that Randy knows that, I think that he's got to play Chromox and play one of his threats into a Force of Will just to try to get something going. I mean, he's not going to have enough time to deploy all these threats anyway, so you might as well trade for some of Rich's cards here.
Yeah, I think that he probably wants to lead on Windfall since I think getting that countered. I mean, getting rid of multiple cards in Rich's hand.
And then having a Windfall is like, not as exciting.
Right, and also, assuming that one of his mana gets blown up, he still needs to draw basically a 0 mana artifact to turn on Diminishing Returns next turn, which is a rough spot to be in.
Is going to lead with Diminishing Returns just to lead with the more expensive card, which I assume is the reason.
It's going to be very hard to cast next turn once you get something blown up.
No, Randy. Yeah, okay. He is playing Windfall. He just tapped his Mox for. Doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not resolving anyway, which he's got to know because, not only does Rich not want Randy to draw 4 extra cards, Rich's hand is very good. He doesn't really want to discard it. I might actually pitch Mental Misstep here. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not absurd. Having Treasure Cruise in hand makes Gush a little bit redundant, but
it's probably best to pitch Gush, and then just play turn 2 Wear Tear, or rather, I guess Wear, and then.
I'm actually not sure. I actually think that your original thought of Mental Misstep is probably where I'd go with this. I'm not positive it's right, but I do like it.
Oh, Rich pitched Treasure Cruise, which I think is a distant third.
Yeah, that's my last choice.
But he's handily destroying Randy anyway because he drew a second Wear Tear. Interesting. I wonder what enchantments he was worried about. Because Wear itself is not the most efficient card. So clearly he's got white mana to play all these Wear Tears.
Yeah. I would imagine the card Oath of Druids, but.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That is the enchantment I was looking for. So. Leading with Gush here, which I like, because then you can go Preordain, then you can cast Wear on that Mox Ruby. At some point, Randy is going to... I mean, Randy might want to just Force of Will Wear here, right? I mean, he's got to protect his mana. Maybe not, though. Maybe... But the problem is, Randy can't...
He needs to draw, like, Black Lotus exactly.
Yeah. If Randy doesn't force, he can't cast Grim Monolith or Soul Ring or anything like that, or Mana Vault, like any of the actual... mana artifacts.
They're both on effectively. Rich's hand did not get anywhere there, but
no.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of lands. Randy's got a couple of cards.
If he had a Treasure Cruise instead of Mental Misstep, he'd be in a slightly better shape here. But I think he's in pretty decent shape already, because they're both top decking, but Randy has much fewer resources.
Yeah, for sure.
And that Mental Misstep is still going to do something at some point this game, presumably. Like, Randy's going to draw a Preordain or draw a 1-mana artifact, and it's not like the Mental Misstep's a blank card, for sure.
But, I mean, just to put in perspective, the other option was he got to draw 3.
Yeah.
And so Preordain or Soul Ring are just not as good as I get to draw 3. My deck is full of Ingot Chewers, Wear Tears, Dak Maidens, threats, counterspells, another Mental Misstep, Like, so I think that really highlights just where that play, where Treasure Cruise would have just been the better card to keep, I guess.
Yeah, this game was not going to be a super fast game. Like, maybe it feels like a lot of games against this deck are, but this game's actually turning kind of attrition. Both players are just using their cards to kill other players' cards.
And you can be completely sure that Randy had it. There's no one that I can think of that could be in his hand because there's nothing that he can really do with it in his hand unless he's building up to a Mind's Desire and wants to hold Mana Vault, but he's so far away. Like that's one of the few potential options, but it's just not Treasure Cruise. There's a reason that card is restricted.
Is it because Wizards hates fun?
It's because they finally want to bring you back down to earth. You've just been doing too much winning, presumably, at some point.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, Randy drew Black Lotus, which is one of the better draws in general. So he's going to get to resolve a Diminishing Returns. We're back into a real game here, and with Randy having an Academy in play already.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything you just said.
So the question is, do you sack Lotus and tap Ruby, leaving Academy up? that produces 2, or do you just
I
tap
don't.
Academy and hope to go off next turn? No. So
What would you
Dimension
do?
Returns is Time Twister for blue 2, but also exiles your top 10 cards when it resolves, which is kind of funny. I would have sacked the Lotus, I think. I think you're
Okay.
winning way more. Like, the problem is Rich has so much artifact removal that you've already seen that if you pass the turn without winning, you might end up with very few mana in play.
It's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
This is a
also,
reasonable hand. It's
Dimension
not
Returns also
insane.
has another clause. You draw up to 7 cards, so you could, if you didn't want the full 7, you didn't have to take it.
It's so kind of it. Well, we
So,
both have hands. Like these
oh
are
yeah.
hands.
So Randy's got the Belcher with Pact of Negation backup. Can he
Mhm.
get to 7 mana? I don't think he can, because he can't play Monolith. I mean, it depends what he hits off this
Yeah.
probe. Though, if I'm Rich, I think for sure mental misstepping the probe. After which Randy, of course, mental missteps back. But still,
I guess once you also factor in the diminishing returns is going to shuffle that Lotus right back in, it's even better to sack it, huh?
that's true. But then it could get exiled, and getting Black Lotus exiled seems like it could be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
Lotus being exiled is not part of the calculation, despite Ephra's strong assertion otherwise. So,
Yeah, and it was strong.
so I believe Rich is going to cast Mental Misstep here, at which point Randy's going to Mental Misstep back because he wants his card. Because what Randy really wants to do is be able to cast Grim Monolith without tapping Academy, because then he gets up to 7 mana. He gets up to play Belcher, Pact, and have backup. So
That's a good spot.
Rich needs Randy to not hit a 0 mana artifact off this Gitaxian Probe.
Of which there are a lot.
Yeah, there's a couple. Or like a Soul Ring or any sort of mana producing artifact. Because what's going to happen next is, let's say Randy doesn't, he gets to play like Monolith Belcher. Rich is going to force it. Randy's going to pack back. Then if Rich gets to untap, he gets to untap and Ingot Chewer the Belcher away. Though he could actually Ingot Chewer some of Randy's mana away and let him die to Pact. Actually, that could also work. Depending if Randy, I don't think Randy ends up with that little mana though. No, I guess you probably just have to kill the Belcher.
Just looking for a cheap artifact.
Yeah, I mean, certainly can't force a Will Gitaxian Probe. That feels like a play that you can basically never make unless you really know something about what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's funny enough. That is exactly how I lost the semifinals to Randy, by not force of willing Gitaxian Probe when I was supposed to.
well, like I said, you have to have a lot of context before you do that.
Yeah.
So
I
Randy
ended up casting a mental misstep, not being able to cast my force of will, got misstepped back, and lost.
So Randy drew Ponder, which is kind of interesting because he can now. He doesn't lose anything by going Mox, Imprint, Windfall, cast Ponder.
He loses a mana.
But he can. But regardless, he can't belch this. He can't belch and play Belcher and use it this turn, right?
He could draw Black Lotus. He could draw.
I'm saying if he doesn't use Ponder.
Yeah. No, we're just saying because he needed a 0 cast artifact, it does set him back.
Yeah, he did. Ponder's certainly not the card he wanted to draw, but he could hit the card. The list got a lot smaller once the Ponder showed up, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Randy can play Mox. I guess Randy can also just go Chrome Mox, Charbelcher, not even play the Grim Monolith. But I don't know if that really accomplishes anything.
Yeah, just get it Ingot Jord, and he still has Forcible backup, and he gets to cast. He can't cast Dig Through Time yet, but it's not like super far away.
No, especially since, I mean, force pitching. I guess the force pitches the probe if you want to use Dig, so the probe's not going to the graveyard. But
the Ingot Jord and the land are, so you really have to still go for it next turn, or that Dig's going to be on, and he's just going to have 4 lands in play anyway. So
yeah.
And as you noted many times earlier in the game, but I don't think we said after the diminishing returns, there is a Tundra in Rich Shay's hand, so the white mana that you alluded to. Interesting that you chose to play Flooded Strand. You'd think, I'm sure he doesn't have basic planes, but I wonder if that was a thought. Something you hear a lot of people talk about is the choice of fetch lands. When any blue fetch land will do, they all fetch every land in the deck unless you're boarding in a mountain or a plains for sideboard cards. So it's interesting what people sometimes choose to do.
So Randy imprinted the Ponder. It looks like is he gonna play the Windfall?
Interesting.
And that sets up next turn a win with Belcher backup. Because Rich is gonna force this.
What if he doesn't force this?
Yeah, it's kind of better for Rich if he doesn't force this, but I mean, how's he gonna know that?
Right.
And his hand right now is pretty good. So, because now
It is.
he's if he snaps off the ingot chewer and kills the chrome mox, then Randy still is in a spot. Oh wow, actually, Rich could double ingot chewer the 2 moxes here, and then
Yeah.
Randy has access to just 2 mana.
Yeah, it's just kind of dead, right? In bad shape.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to do that because then that also sets up you casting dig next turn.
Yeah, I mean, ingot chewers aren't in there to be 3/3s. Let's just use them when we got them.
Yeah, and the moxes produce 2 mana each right now. The map is just a 1 mana artifact, and same with monolith. So the moxes are by far the most appealing target.
Mox Sapphire.
Yeah.
Well, the Mox Ruby is a Mox Ruby Sapphire. I'm off it. Interesting. Yeah, this game really got shaken up.
Yeah. I think Randy drew pretty well to get to the spot where he had resolved the diminishing returns. I mean, he just drew 2 mana sources and Rich drew 4 land and 4 cards. But Rich is, you know, he has done better afterwards in his last couple draw steps, and Randy's last couple draw steps matched up well for Rich.
Yeah, the ingot chewer. We weren't sure exactly how great it was. Obviously, destroying an artifact's nice, but you're talking about a sorcery speed destroying an artifact against a deck that is capable of winning on turn 1 and not too hard to win on turn 2. So, not necessarily the best card in
Yeah,
the world, but yeah, these games start to get drawn out and Academy gets pinched.
yeah, and the thing is, even though Ingot Chewer may not seem like an A plus, it has been very good, and Rich has to have plenty of cards he can board out. Though he has a lot of artifact debt. If he has Ingot Chewers and Wear Tears, I'd be curious to see what the numbers are, because it certainly can't be like 4 and 4. It could be like 4 Chewers, 2 Wear Tears though.
Yeah, that's more what I expect.
Just all shatters. So now
Yeah.
Randy's on drawing like a Lotus or something. Ancestral Recall is never a bad draw.
Yeah, being forced to tap Academy is not the best spot in the world, but it's still an Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, that means that Randy might be in okay shape here. Oh wow, Randy drew insane. He just drew Mana Vault to play Candelabra, play a Chrome Mox, untap Academy. I think he can win this turn. Yeah. that was an
2-1.
That was an impressive string of draw steps for Randy.
I think he's pretty far away. Am I wrong?
Because he's got 1 mana floating, right?
Oh, does he have mana floating?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
maybe yeah.
I think that's enough. I mean, I didn't actually count.
One,
but he has
2,
5.
6.
Yeah, I think it's exactly
7.
enough. Actually,
Yeah, looks like exactly enough. Wow.
He has to imprint on Mox. Wow, yeah. That was absurd. He ancestraled into 6 mana somehow.
Yeah, that doesn't sound realistic. You got me there. So this is why you hold on to Mental Misstep? Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I didn't know he had a mana floating. That's
Candelabra's a pretty nice one. That's a new addition.
For sure.
Maybe Randy has less keys in here at that point. They seem like they're kind of similar spots.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So Randy knows that Rich has a dig, and he knows the other card too. Actually,
yeah, he knows.
So he knows he does not need this Pact of Negation.
He is slow rolling. Still had all these, Rich Shay. Still had all these.
And with Academy in play, of course, the Belcher will do 32 damage or something like that.
What is Rich at? He's not at 33, is he?
No, he's at 14.
That'll do it then.
Looks like it.
Randy Buehler, ladies and gentlemen. That was a good ancestor. I like how he draws the ancestor. You're like, that's always good. You're like, it's not actually that good. We're looking at like, a 1 to 2 turn clock, potentially dead next turn. Dig Through Time can find like a Time Walk or even just like a Force of Will is probably going to do it, like in a lot of situations. But no, ancestral into 6 mana.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the reason you play this deck is it does ridiculous things, and Randy went from having an Academy and
we are right about there being 7 mana, and because this is taking a while at this point.
Yeah, we're
it taps for 5 and Chromox is 6, and he has 1 floating. All right, so Chromox makes 1. That's 2 total and 5 artifacts with the Academy. That'll be 7. So when Randy decides to sweep the leg will be swept.
Yeah, this is a kind of sick slow roll. We'll see. I mean, the thing is, Randy has to imprint a pack negation. Obviously, it's something you don't normally want to do when you're going for it.
Yeah,
But
he
I'm
knows the
pretty
two
sure
cards now.
he knows the dig for sure, and I'm like very sure
Yeah.
he saw the Tundra.
Yeah, the Tundra. Oh, it was for sure in his hand. I mean,
Yeah.
I was commenting on it on your
Yeah, I remember that.
pointing that out. So, yeah, he drew the Ingature this turn. Like,
Yeah. So unless Randy thinks he doesn't know one of the cards and is wondering if it's a force of will, but even then against a dig, are you really passing against dig? You're not that likely to win in that case.
no, I think I just take the 100%er. It's close. I do like the sweat, as Ben S would say. Like, do you want to just win the game, or do you want the sweat?
Yeah, Ben has been disappointed at times when he doesn't get the full sweat. All right, here's the Chrome Mox. So looks like we're going for it here.
Going for it, meaning tapping the mana and showing the cards in hand. Well, he could have more lands in his deck. Was that what he's thinking about? Is there a second
Maybe.
academy?
Well, it's possible that
Mishra's workshops.
It's possible that he boarded in Mishra's workshop. If he, you know, I saw Randy's deck list, so he has Mishra's workshop in his sideboard.
Yeah, I mean that could be the one thing you're thinking about, but
and maybe he's deciding whether he wants to belch no, he can't do anything but belch Pyromancer. Or but belch Rich rather. I mean, you could belch Pyromancer to be
the old
safe.
Pyromancer, not the young Pyromancer.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And the
Right,
full
so
amount.
He did not have more lands. It was, yeah. All right. So we get a game 3.
We do, and we'll see. I mean, Randy's deck.
How were you feeling 5 minutes ago when the candelabra resolved? If you were Rich Shay, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I suspect he's kind of surprised as to this turn of events, but
there's probably other members of the league, myself included, who would be a bit more of what is the little icon that everyone likes to post, the little shaker, like, oh yeah,
the salt shake. Yeah, PJ Salt.
But yeah, I think Rich Shay is not necessarily the saltiest member of our group, but
no, he's probably the least actually.
Yeah, I would take him as number 1 on the least scale.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I wish that happened to someone else. No.
Yeah, that would have been more funny. The
pain.
The Skype chat has been heated before. Let's just put it that way.
But only like once, right? Like, at no other point has there ever been a disagreement. There's never been a rant. There's never been anyone mad about anything. No,
it was just the one time. So
and that was Rich Shay who started it, I believe. No, was it not? It might have been someone else.
VSL After Dark. But so even though Randy's deck didn't have any turn 1 kills here, that kind of shows how explosive it was. He Ancestral into 6 mana. He went in a course of like 3 turns from having no cards in hand and 1 mana to having it all. So
yeah, well, facing down, kind of close to it all. I mean,
yeah, also true.
Forcible Mental Misstep, Gush, Treasure Cruise, like,
yeah,
and Wear Tear. Like,
yeah, so I think that
the full nut everything.
It is a pretty impressive sequence there. So you kind of see that's why Randy's playing the deck. Of course, his opening hands haven't matched up against Rich's very well, but he won a long game there. That was, a turn 5-6 game. And I think that, Rich maybe has to respect that Randy can go off out of nowhere, even with very few resources to begin with.
And now for the exciting conclusion of our Rich Shay Randy Buehler feature
match. Rich Shay with, again, an excellent hand. Force, Mental Misstep, Pyroblast, Ingature. And a Time Walk too, though that's less relevant. Whereas Randy has pretty good hand himself. He's got the map for Academy, but here's why it's so much worse. I mean, Rich is going to Mental Misstep the have to do that.
Yeah. Rich, of course, missing a threat, so not putting any pressure on Randy, which is not really the biggest deal in the world, although we saw last game you give the deck enough time and can just do some things.
So Randy's going to get to see what Rich has got going on. Gitaxian Probe is kind of nice there. But even though Randy drew the Mental Misstep, unless Randy draws another one or a force, if he goes for map, Rich is going to Mental Misstep, Randy can Mental Misstep, Rich can Pyroblast. Rich also potentially could Ingature the map if Randy doesn't imprint Chrome Mox.
All options.
A kind of interesting thing that's been going on here too is these players are battling his cards back and forth, but Randy has full information on Rich's hand pretty much all the time. And Rich doesn't know what Randy has, which does make the game a little easier to play from Randy's side. Not only does he have less options in general, he also knows how his threats line up against Rich's answers. Rich doesn't know that, he needs to mental misstep or force a specific thing, or he didn't know that windfall resolving would have been good for him, for example.
I'm not entirely sure that windfall
Well,
resolving was good for him. Like we noted, his hand was quite good, but yeah, it would have actually worked out interestingly. Of course, they're both drawing 6 cards, so Rich can just draw 6 lands while Randy just kills him on the spot. Like that can just happen. But yeah, I mean,
so
as we
Randy
saw
drew
from Ancestral
Ancestral off
Recall,
that.
if Rich had bricked, that's a good card. But yeah, if that windfall had resolved, Randy's drawing, that Ancestral and the 3 cards that came with it, which was just a million mana. And if Rich didn't draw anything, that windfall probably just would have killed him anyway. Although Randy would have to draw another copy of Charbelcher or Way to Win. He could also do it with like a Tezzeret or something.
Randy drew Ancestral, so now the question is, he can resolve one of Map or Ancestral. I think what he tries to do is play Map, mental misstep the mental misstep, Rich potentially Pyroblast, in which case Randy gets to resolve Ancestral.
Well, he still has Force of Will.
Well, he gets to bait out Force of Will.
Right, yeah.
Which is still
that's
pretty
very
good
far
Randy.
away from just resolving Ancestral Recall, but it is a good thing.
Rich fetching the Volcanic just because. Yeah, I mean, you know about the Pyroblast, so. Rich could actually take a gamble here if he wanted to, of letting Map resolve and trying to Ingature it once Randy, of course, missteps here, but that seems kind of ambitious.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Randy has a lot of explosive mana in his deck.
It'd be interesting to know if Rich has No Rod in his deck, because there's a chance he just may have 0 No Rods. He's got a lot of other anti-artifact cards.
Yeah, it seems reasonably likely that he has 0. He may have 1. I think it's unlikely that he has more than 1. Of course, if he does just have the single 1, like we saw cards like Dig Through Time really does a good job of finding things that you need, but especially with a bunch of things like Windfalls helping you out.
Yeah, I mean, I like
see
1-ups to begin with, and Dig Through Time makes me like them more.
Yeah, that's really weird that you would really like variants, huh?
So Map doesn't resolve. Now Randy can go Mox, but he has to play the Chrome Mox if he wants to Ancestral.
Yeah, which means imprinting Tezzeret.
He could not imprint Tezzeret and just use Chrome Mox to power Mox Opal, but given that he already has a Belcher in hand,
yeah,
I don't know. I think you imprint Tezzeret here, but
like not having your map means that you really need that Academy, and pinching yourself on mana again, it's pretty rough to do. Although he is facing down Ingature that he knows about.
Yeah, so he did imprint the Tezzeret. If you're Rich, you got a force here, right? You got Ingature to follow it up. So this isn't that bad for Randy.
I'm not 100% on it because again, you're playing against an all-in deck that's down to 2 cards. Of course, going back up to 5 is threatening. I would force of will it. I'm not 100% that it's just something you have to do.
Yeah.
Like instinctually, it just seems like it's right, and it's definitely the play I would make. But it's definitely probably worth thinking about. Maybe.
I think if I had a threat, I'd be less inclined to. But with no threat and with Ingature to blow up an artifact to kind of keep Randy at low resources, I mean, you've got a good shot of blowing up Chrome Mox and stranding Randy with uncastables, right? So
yeah,
which is what is likely going to happen here.
Yeah, looking for a good preordain if you're Rich Shay. Young Pyromancer's a card. He's going to have no cards in hand besides it, so not the most threatening Young Pyromancer we've ever seen. But
we didn't get to see what cards Rich saw. If you had seen, let's say, Young Pyromancer in a blank that you were for sure putting on bottom, would you leave Young Pyromancer on top there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you do have to pressure here.
Yeah, you need to close out the game, and what Young Pyromancer does, again, it doesn't do anything with no cards in hand. It's 2 damage a turn, but it does threaten to spiral out of control. You just draw 1 copy of Preordain, or God forbid, a Dig Through Time or a Treasure Cruise, and you're really just online.
So Randy had a pretty good draw there. Mox Emerald was not bad because now any 1 mana source, and he gets to play Belcher, including Map. So
that is a solid draw.
He does not get to play Belcher this turn, though.
No, but he is well set up. He's on his way. Rich is going to have to top deck.
Yeah, Rich is going to need to top deck an artifact removal spell and hope Randy doesn't top deck any mana, or he's going to have to top deck a counter spell. Well, he knows it's coming now.
Yeah, Probe's good draw. He makes a 1/1, draws a card. Know what you're up against. No rod would be good.
And
Young
Pyromancer,
Pyromancer,
not so
nah.
much. So Rich basically has to hope now that Randy doesn't draw any sort of mana on his turn and plays the Belcher, and then Rich draws a way to kill it.
So if you're Rich Shay, do you play this Young Pyromancer or
I
do
was
you
just thinking
bluff?
that. Because if you don't play it, Randy may hold on the Belcher, and I think your chances of winning are higher, but
I
yeah, it
just
looks
don't
like
think Randy holds on the Belcher is the problem.
yeah. He doesn't want Rich to get a chance to draw Force plus blue card, for
Yeah.
example. Or just
Like
draw Treasure Cruise.
there are so many like even counters in his deck that don't actually do anything.
Yeah.
Mental missteps and cards like Flusterstorm are probably already out of the deck, but it doesn't actually do anything if he just has Pyroblast, Mental Missteps, and Force Wills. They're just off. So we're basically looking at exactly Spell Pierce, which doesn't even counter the Charbelcher.
Oh, he drew Snapcaster, but Snapcaster Ingot Chewer is not actually a combo.
Yeah, interesting. So is this game just over?
No, because Rich can Snapcaster the Gitaxian Probe to look for an Ingot Chewer. He can't Snapcaster Preordain because if he Snapcaster Preordain, he'd have no mana left to do anything. But Snapcaster Probe and hope to draw Ingot Chewer exactly, or like
Yeah.
Ancestral into Lotus Time Walk nonsense. But we already had one nonsense Ancestral happen. I don't think we're gonna have two.
Yeah. Interesting turn of events. Randy drew out of it a little bit better. Rich's draws were not bad, but they were both kind of on empty.
Yeah, and that worked out for Randy 2 games in a row, actually.
I guess I say they were both kind of on empty, but that just means Randy's hand was a Charbelcher, which when you have 2 mana doesn't do very much. But yeah, I drew the right cards. It's in a good spot. So, Snapcaster Probe and
Yeah, it's time to again draw Ingot Chewer exactly, or like again some Ancestral into Lotus combination. Or I guess he could draw a Gush. Gush is actually kind of nice because Gush gets you two more shots and an extra mana. So Gush into Wear Tear also works.
so you're saying like Paul would be a big favorite here, but Rich Shay's probably a dog.
Like Shahar would be a huge favorite. Paul would be a small
Well, Shahar would
favorite.
have already won the game, right?
Yeah. And then you and I would be incredibly huge dogs. And Rich Shay is just like also a huge dog because he's
Because
got
of
very
real life.
yeah, in actual reality here.
It's going to be interesting if he ends up hitting that miracle like ancestral Lotus time walk that you talked about and still loses because he didn't play the Pyromancer.
Yes, I think that would be pretty funny.
Although
Right,
Randy can just counter this misstep or can
oh.
misstep this probe. It doesn't do anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Randy's for sure just going to do that. I'd even thought Randy was not up to anything anymore.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that he had drawn a card for his actual turn.
That makes this turn much less exciting because it would have been pretty sweet if if Shay did peel.
Yeah, now I just want to know the top card of his deck.
Yeah, same. And that will do it unless Randy sided in another land.
That would be sweet.
All right, I get to battle Belcher, but actually I think I have a good deck against this. So we'll find out relatively shortly here.
So we're looking at an LSV Randy Buehler mirror match.
Yeah, something like that.
Sounds like it's about your cup of tea.
Yep.
Your cup of Chipotle.
So Randy advances to 1-0 over Rich Shay through one scenario where it looked like he was very much not going to win game 2, and then game 3 it was pretty close where either player could have drawn out of it. Turned out Randy drew 2 mana sources in a row to play his Belcher and use it. And then that was that. I mean, that's what the Mono Blue Belcher does, assuming it doesn't win turn 1, which is what it's really trying to actually do.
Yeah, it had some opportunities to come close. I mean, Rich Shay's hands were good with that early disruption that he really needs to make it a game, but yeah, it's that mid-game, aka turn 3 disruption that he did not have, and Randy was able to resolve the Charbelcher and ride it to victory.
Yep, and I believe it's you and Dave on commentary for this one.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it's getting changed out. So we were supposed to have you versus Kai with
Right.
Randy and Dave doing commentary, and it's just you're the only one left out of that foursome. So it's going to be you versus Randy, and I think it's going to be me and Rich Shay actually doing commentary. Dave's not feeling too well; he had surgery last week, so he's going to take a little break. Doesn't really want to do commentary on killers.
No,
So
no worries.
we're gonna have a replacement, and I will replace Randy, and Randy will replace Kai. It's just the circle of life.
Yep. So it looks like we're going to be moving, take a quick break, and then we'll be back with you and Rich Shay doing commentary, me against Randy Buehler.